You know, that hollow feeling when your world suddenly stops, like your ears are filled with thick cotton, and all you can hear is the frantic, heavy pounding of your own heart? That was exactly what happened to me when Brenda from Human Resources slid a printed sheet of paper across her sterile laminate desk. A 60% salary reduction, effective immediately. I sat there staring at the black bold print, watching the numbers blur together as if staring at them hard enough would magically alter the mathematical reality in front of me. 60%. I did not cry in that room. I refused to give them that satisfaction. I pulled together a tight, controlled smile, looking Brenda directly in the eyes, and said that I would need 24 hours to consider their proposal. I spoke with the icy composure of a corporate automaton, concealing the fact that my world had just been violently gutted. The breakdown happened the moment I reached the driver's seat of my pickup truck, parked on the third floor of the concrete garage. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned stark white, and then heavy sobs tore out of my chest. Racking gasps of air fogged up the front windshield as sweat ran down my face. I sat alone in that cold parking garage for 45 minutes, completely breaking down in the dark. Because what is a person supposed to do when the corporate entity you have dedicated 9 years of your life to suddenly decides you are worth less than half of what they paid you yesterday? My name is Richard Vance. I am 48 years old, a single father raising my 12-year-old son, Mason. Up until that devastating morning meeting, I served as Vice President of Strategic Client Solutions at Merrickson Technologies in Columbus, Ohio. My life has not been easy over the past few years, but I took immense pride in providing a comfortable home for my son. When my former wife, Clara, decided 7 years ago that marriage and motherhood were limiting her personal spiritual journey, packing her bags and moving to the Southwest with a freelance yoga instructor named Dustin. My priorities condensed into a single objective: protecting Mason and securing his future. Mason is a brilliant boy who loves science experiments and robotics, but he also suffers from severe pediatric asthma. Anyone who has cared for a child with chronic medical conditions knows the agonizing fear of fluctuating health insurance policies. His specialized daily maintenance inhalers, emergency nebulizer treatments, and quarterly pulmonologist appointments cost thousands of dollars every quarter. My salary was not just a symbol of professional success. It was the essential lifeline that kept our mortgage paid, our utility bills current, and my son breathing comfortably through the night without emergency room visits. I joined Merrickson Technologies back when the entire company operated out of a converted warehouse on the west side of town. There were only 20 employees in those early days, working long hours fueled by cold pizza and shared idealism. We had the ping pong tables in the break room, Friday social hours, and corporate mantras about being a family. That rhetoric seems inspiring in the beginning, right up until cold realities of corporate restructuring render it meaningless. I was hired as an account manager, but I threw my soul into the job. I worked 80-hour weeks, volunteered for night shifts during critical deployments, sacrificed weekend, family gatherings, and postponed vacations. I did everything ambitious professionals are warned not to do, but I did it willingly because I believed in our mission, and I was exceptionally good at my work. Within 3 years, I was promoted to direct our major client partnerships. I personally managed our top 10 enterprise accounts, which collectively generated over 70% of Merrickson's annual gross revenue. I knew those clients inside and out. I knew their technical architectures, fiscal budgetary cycles, internal politics, birthdays, and the names of their children. To me, these were never abstract account numbers on a spreadsheet. They were deep professional relationships built on 9 years of unyielding trust, transparency, and middle-of-the-night problem-solving. When clients faced catastrophic software outages, they did not call our support hotline. They called my personal cell phone, knowing I would personally resolve the issue. By my 5th year, I was elevated to vice president. I managed a dedicated team of 8 account specialists. I held equity options in Merrickson, earned a solid salary of $130,000 annually, and finally felt that after years of personal upheaval, my life had reached a stable plateau. For the first time since my divorce, I could sleep soundly without worrying about money. Then came the corporate acquisition. Apex Corporation, a massive private equity conglomerate known for aggressive cost-cutting, bought Merrickson Technologies 18 months ago. Bernard Holt, our original founder, stood on a riser in the cafeteria, assuring us with trembling enthusiasm that this acquisition marked an exciting new chapter. Everyone in the room clapped like seals, while I sat quietly in the back row, noticing that Bernard could not look a single one of us in the eye. I learned 6 months later that Bernard had received a personal buyout check of $3 million upon closing, fully vested before quietly retiring to his beachfront property in Florida. Meanwhile, the rest of the legacy staff had their original equity options converted into illiquid phantom stock under a fresh 4-year vesting schedule that reset our seniority. The first 6 months under Apex ownership were tolerable on the surface. We endured new corporate email signatures, standardized expense reporting software, and mandatory compliance webinars. But beneath polished marketing, financial liquidators were quietly preparing their knives. Soon, redundancy assessments began. First, they eliminated junior quality assurance engineers. Then, they laid off middle-tier department supervisors. Every 2 weeks, a company-wide email from corporate headquarters in Chicago would arrive, babbling about optimizing synergies and maximizing shareholder value. The very next morning, another colleague's desk would be cleared out without a single goodbye. I looked down at the glowing phone screen, expecting another urgent operational alert from an anxious client. Instead, the caller identification displayed a name I had not seen in months. Nora Albright. Nora was a brilliant senior account executive who had worked alongside me at Merrickson for 5 years, before resigning 6 months after the Apex acquisition. She had seen the writing on the wall long before the rest of us. I hesitated for a moment, wiping my damp eyes with the sleeve of my jacket before pressing the answer button. "Hey, Nora," I said, struggling to project a normal tone. "Richard," Nora responded immediately, her voice sharp and filled with purpose. "I have been trying to reach you on LinkedIn all week. Have you checked your personal messages at all?" I had not. I had been working 80 hours a week, trying to keep our clients satisfied, trying to protect my remaining team from layoffs, and trying to keep Merrickson's regional infrastructure from collapsing. "Listen to me, Richard," Nora continued, cutting straight through small talk. "I am currently working as the Senior Director of Business Development at Pinnacle Systems. You know we are Apex's primary market competitor in the enterprise software space, right? My CEO, Terrence Fletcher, has been asking about you constantly for the past 3 months. We are launching a massive expansion of our Midwest Enterprise division, and we desperately need an executive with your exact client trust and operational track record. Would you be open to an immediate conversation?" I looked out through my truck's rain-streaked windshield at the imposing concrete building of Apex Regional Office 8. I looked at the sleek corporate logo that had replaced our original Merrickson banner. I thought of Graham Palmer, his smug white smiles, his gleaming Rolex, and his total contempt for my 9 years of dedication. I thought of Bernard Holt sitting on his beach in Florida with his $3 million. "Actually, Nora," I said, feeling a sudden surge of adrenaline replace my despair, "I think meeting tonight would be absolute perfection." I drove home with my mind racing at light speed. I was not naive. I understood the immense gravity of speaking with a direct competitor. But Apex had just explicitly declared that my career, my financial security, and my family's well-being were completely disposable. What possible loyalty did I owe to corporate liquidators who had just handed me a 60% pay cut? When I arrived at my house, I paid our regular afternoon caregiver, hugged Mason tightly, and helped him set up his science project on the kitchen table. Once he was safely engrossed in his homework, I took my personal laptop into my private study and opened my original employment contract from Merrickson Technologies, signed 9 years ago. I searched meticulously through every page, section by section. Because Merrickson had been founded as an open, trusting startup, Bernard Holt had never included a formal non-compete clause in our original employment agreements. Later corporate hires under Apex had been forced to sign aggressive restrictive covenants, but corporate HR had forgotten to execute updated employment contracts for legacy executives like myself. It was a massive corporate oversight on their part. Under federal labor standards and contract law, without a signed non-compete agreement, I was legally free to offer my professional skills to any employer in the marketplace. At 9:30 that evening, I called Nora back on her direct line. "Can you set up a private breakfast meeting with Terrence Fletcher tomorrow morning before 9 o'clock?" I asked. Nora paused on the line, sensing the urgency in my voice. "Did something happen at Apex?" "Worse," I replied coldly. "They just served me a 60% salary reduction while demanding I maintain full operational duties and train my eventual offshore replacement." Nora gasped loudly over the phone. "Those absolute fools." "Give me 10 minutes, Richard. I am messaging Terrence right now." 15 minutes later, my phone rang again. A deep, authoritative male voice echoed through the speaker. "Richard, this is Terrence Fletcher, CEO of Pinnacle Systems. Nora tells me we need to have breakfast before you make any decisions with Apex tomorrow morning." "Yes, Mr. Fletcher," I answered, amazed by how calm and focused my voice sounded. "I believe we can be of immense mutual benefit to each other." "I assume Apex is executing their standard post-acquisition liquidation strategy," Terrence said with a low chuckle. "How does 7:30 tomorrow morning sound? We can meet at the Westside Cafe, far away from both of our corporate offices." "7:30 works perfectly for me," I confirmed. After ending the call, I sat quietly in my study for an hour, staring out into the dark backyard. Was I really preparing to jump ship to our fiercest rival? But as I looked at the situation clearly, Merrickson was no longer a real company. It was a dying hull being stripped by private equity vultures. I opened my personal secure cloud storage and reviewed my personal professional records. Not confidential proprietary software code or proprietary corporate trade secrets, which would violate 17 U.S.C. Section 106, but my personal professional networking logs built over 9 years. I knew every key executive at Westfield International, Alder Tech, Breerwood Systems, and Tetracorp. I knew their contractual renewal dates, operational pain points, technical frustrations with Apex's recent service downgrades, and the exact strategic solutions they required. That knowledge was not corporate trade secrets. It was my personal professional intellect, earned through nearly a decade of relentless hard work. And tomorrow morning I was going to discover exactly what that intellect was worth in an open market. I checked on Mason before going to bed. He was sleeping peacefully, his small chest rising and falling rhythmically, his emergency asthma inhaler sitting on the nightstand beside his bed. I leaned down and gently brushed the hair from his forehead. "I am going to fix this, son," I whispered in the dark. "I promise you." I did not sleep more than 2 hours that night. My mind was constructing every line of the upcoming negotiations. By dawn, I dressed with meticulous precision. I put on my finest Navy suit, the one I reserved for closing $20 million enterprise deals, along with a crisp white shirt and a silk tie. It was my professional armor. I dropped Mason off at school, hugged him tightly, and looked him in the eye. "Are you okay, Dad?" Mason asked, noticing the intensity in my expression. At 10 o'clock sharp on Wednesday morning, I walked back through the glass front doors of Apex Regional Office 8. I carried my briefcase containing my signed Pinnacle Systems contract, a copy of my original 9-year-old Merrickson contract, and a cold strategy forming in my mind. Graham Palmer and Brenda Cooper were waiting inside the executive conference room. Graham was reviewing metrics on his tablet, looking thoroughly impatient, while Brenda sat beside him with my official personnel folder open on the desk. "Richard," Graham said without looking up from his screen, adjusting his tie, "I trust you are prepared to sign the compensation amendment today? We have a regional executive board call at 11, and I need this finalized." I sat down calmly across from them, placed my hands flat on the glass table, and offered a tight smile. "Before we discuss signatures, Graham, I have several critical operational questions regarding client continuity." Graham let out a theatrical sigh, setting his tablet down. "We really do not have time for administrative debate, Richard. It is a simple yes or no decision. As we explained, corporate is restructuring the entire regional management structure." "I understand your perspective," I replied smoothly. "However, as vice president, I am currently directing our 2 largest enterprise implementations. The complete cloud migration for Audrey Kensington at Westfield International, scheduled for deployment next month, and the contract renewal discussions with Spencer Dunbar at Alder Tech in June. These two accounts alone represent over $12 million in recurring revenue. Who will be assuming direct executive leadership for these implementations? Graham waved his hand dismissively. Corporate operations will allocate those account responsibilities appropriately among junior staff. That is an administrative detail outside your daily duties. Actually, I do concern myself with it, I countered firmly. Audrey Kensington specifically executed her contract with a key person clause requiring my personal oversight, and Spencer Dunbar explicitly stated that any change in account leadership would trigger an immediate review of their vendor status. Those relationships were built on personal trust, not corporate branding. Those accounts belong to Apex Corporation, not to you personally, Graham snapped, his pleasant facade completely vanishing as his voice hardened. Now let us return to the matter at hand. Do you accept the revised compensation structure of $52,000, or are you resigning? I leaned back in my chair, looking Graham straight in his cold eyes. Is it true that Apex plans to eliminate all domestic client support operations and move them overseas within 8 months? The color instantly drained from Graham's face. Beside him, Brenda suddenly became intensely fascinated by the blank notepad in front of her. Where on earth did you hear such absurd rumor? Graham demanded, his eyes narrowing. Is it true, Graham? I pressed, my voice echoing in the quiet conference room. That is confidential corporate strategic planning. Graham barked, slamming his hand onto the table. This meeting is about your election, not hypothetical organizational shifts. Now answer the question. Do you accept the new salary terms or not? I took a slow, deep breath, thinking of Mason, thinking of 9 years of unappreciated sacrifice, and thinking of the signed Pinnacle contract sitting inside my briefcase. I refuse your offer, I stated clearly, and I resign from Apex Corporation, effective immediately. The silence that followed was absolute. Graham blinked twice, his mouth slightly open, completely caught off guard. Excuse me? He stammered. I resign, I repeated, enjoying the utter shock registered on his face. Effective right now. Graham recovered his aggressive posture quickly, his face twisting into a smug sneer. I am afraid corporate policy strictly requires a 30-day written notice period for executive personnel. If you walk out today, you will forfeit all accrued vacation pay, and corporate legal will pursue administrative remedies for breach of contract. I pulled out a printed copy of my original Merrickson employment agreement and slid it across the table to Brent. I suggest you consult Section 4.2 of my legacy employment contract, Graham. When Merrickson was acquired, Apex assumed all existing employment liabilities without issuing updated contracts for legacy executives. Section 4.2 explicitly states that employee notice requirements are tied directly to statutory severance obligations. Furthermore, it explicitly states that any material reduction in executive compensation exceeding 15% constitutes constructive discharge under federal labor principles, immediately waiving all notice and post-employment transition obligations. Brenda quickly leaned over, scanning the legal clause on the page. Her face went pale as she looked up at Graham and gave a subtle shake of her head. I stood up from the table, fastening the button of my suit jacket. That legal clause was drafted 8 years ago after our former executive, Trey Miller, resigned and attempted to hold client accounts hostage. I helped our founder draft that specific language. You would know that if you had conducted a real audit instead of blindly slashing payroll. Graham was turning a dark shade of crimson, his jaw clenching tightly. You cannot just abandon your post. You have operational duties to transfer. Watch me, I said coolly. Furthermore, I have accepted the position of Senior Vice President of Strategic Client Partnerships at Pinnacle Systems. Since Merrickson never required non-compete agreements, and Apex failed to execute new covenants prior to attempting a constructive discharge, I will be commencing my new executive role on Monday morning. The explosion I expected from Graham did not occur. Instead, his expression turned terrifyingly blank. You have just made the single biggest mistake of your life, Vance, he said in a low tone. Apex Legal will review every single email, text message, and document you have ever touched. If we find even the slightest evidence that you have solicited our clients or shared proprietary trade secrets under 17 U.S.C. Section 106, we will file immediate injunctions and bury you in federal litigation until you are completely bankrupt. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Not because I had done anything illegal, for I had scrupulously respected all data security policies, but because I knew how ruthless billion-dollar corporations operated. They could use legal fees as a weapon to destroy an individual's life. I have never taken a single bite of proprietary company data, I stated with absolute moral authority. But my professional reputation, the trust I have cultivated over 9 years, and my personal relationships belong entirely to me, and those are walking out the door right now. My first phone call was directly to Terrence Fletcher at Pinnacle Systems. Terrence, I have officially executed my resignation from Apex, I reported. As anticipated, their corporate vice president threatened immediate federal litigation, claiming breach of contract and trade secret violation. Terrence Trent laughed warmly over the phone. Let them threaten all they want, Richard. Our chief legal counsel has already reviewed your legacy Merrickson contract. The constructive discharge doctrine under federal labor standards completely protects your transition. If Apex files a single frivolous motion, our legal team will countersue them for tortious interference and corporate harassment. You are fully protected. My second phone call was to Bernard Holt, the original founder of Merrickson Technologies, currently sitting on his patio in Florida. His phone rang 4 times before he picked up. Richard? Bernard answered, sounding relaxed. It is wonderful to hear from you, my boy. How are things at the office? Things are catastrophic, Bernard, I replied bluntly. Apex just attempted to cut my salary by 60% while demanding I train offshore replacements. I refused their constructive discharge, resigned on the spot, and accepted an executive vice presidency at Pinnacle Systems. Now Graham Palmer is threatening to destroy me with corporate lawsuits. A profound silence fell over the line. Oh, dear Lord, Bernard whispered, his voice thick with remorse and shame. Richard, I am so incredibly sorry. When I sold the company, Gerald Montgomery personally assured me that legacy leadership would be protected. They are gutting everything you built, Bernard, I said firmly. And now they are using legal threats to intimidate me for seeking fair employment. I need you to call Gerald Montgomery personally right now. Remind him of what you told us when we built Merrickson. If we do not treat our people well enough to make them want to stay, we deserve to lose them. Bernard sighed deeply. You have my word, Richard. I will call Gerald's personal cell phone immediately. This is an absolute disgrace. My third and most critical phone call was to Audrey Kensington, the Chief Technology Officer at Westfield International, our largest enterprise account, representing $7 million in annual revenue. Audrey, it is Richard Vance, I began. Richard, Audrey answered briskly. I was just about to call your office. We need to accelerate our cloud migration timeline by 2 weeks. Our executive board, Audrey, I interrupted gently. I am calling to inform you that as of 1 hour ago, I am no longer affiliated with Apex Corporation. A stunned silence gripped the line for 5 full seconds. What? Audrey demanded, her tone shifting to razor sharp. Where are you going? I have accepted the position of Senior Vice President at Pinnacle Systems, I explained. There was a long pause as Audrey digested the news. Is this connected to Apex's recent operational changes? We have noticed a significant degradation in technical support responsiveness over the last 2 quarters. It is directly connected, I confirmed honestly. Corporate leadership is centralizing operations and removing legacy management from your account without consulting Westfield? Audrey asked, her voice trembling with rising anger. Our enterprise contract explicitly includes a key person clause requiring your personal executive oversight. Who did they assign to replace you? They refused to disclose that information, I replied. Unbelievable, Audrey snapped. 20 years in enterprise technology, and I have never seen such corporate incompetence. This cloud migration is mission critical for our enterprise. Send me your direct contact information at Pinnacle immediately, Richard. We are conducting an emergency executive review of our vendor contract this afternoon. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, when I pulled up to Mason's school to pick him up, my personal phone had received 17 text messages and 24 emails. 6 were from Maria and Devon at the office, forwarding internal memos from Graham Palmer, ordering all staff to immediately isolate my former accounts. 1 was from Bernard Holt confirming he had spoken directly with Apex CEO Gerald Montgomery, and the rest were frantic messages from chief information officers at Alder Tech, Briarwood Systems, and Tetracorp, expressing immense concern over my sudden departure. "Dad!" Mason exclaimed as he climbed into the passenger's seat, immediately sensing the triumphant energy in the truck. "Why are you picking me up early? It isn't Friday." I turned to look at my handsome son. "I left my job at Apex today, Mason," I said with a broad smile. His eyes widened in surprise. "The job that made you work all weekend? The one that made you look so sad at night?" "Yes, buddy." "That exact one," I said softly. "Good," Mason declared decisively, folding his arms. "I hated how tired they made you feel." "I got a brand new job today, Mason," I told him, holding back tears of joy. "A job that pays significantly more money, gives us amazing health insurance for your asthma, and means I will never have to miss another soccer game or science fair." Mason's face lit up with a brilliant smile. "Will you really be in the front row at my robotics competition next month?" "Front row with the loudest cheering signs in the entire auditorium," I promised solemnly. That evening, after Mason was fast asleep in his room, my personal phone rang. The caller identification displayed an unlisted corporate number from Chicago. "Is this Richard Vance?" an authoritative male voice inquired. "Yes, speaking," I replied. "Richard, this is Gerald Montgomery, founder and chief executive officer of Apex Corporation. I understand we have an urgent operational situation." My blood ran cold for a second, but I instantly reclaimed my composure. "Good evening, Mr. Montgomery. I just received a very intense phone call from Bernard Holt," Gerald stated, his tone surprisingly measured. "Furthermore, over the last 3 hours, I have received urgent personal calls from Audrey Kensington at Westfield International and Spencer Dunbar at Alder Tech. Both executives expressed severe dissatisfaction with your departure and explicitly stated they are initiating formal legal reviews to terminate their enterprise contracts with Apex." I remained completely silent, letting the heavy weight of his words settle. Gerald continued, his voice tight. "Those 2 enterprise accounts alone represent over $12 million in annual revenue. If they defect to Pinnacle, secondary clients will undoubtedly follow. Ms. Kensington informed me that her contract's key person clause was breached. The moment corporate altered your executive status." I still said nothing, waiting for him to lay his cards on the table. On Monday morning, I walked through the sleek glass doors of Pinnacle Systems headquarters as Senior Vice President of Strategic Client Partnerships. I was escorted to a spacious corner office featuring floor-to-ceiling windows, real wood furniture, and an inspiring view of the downtown skyline. But far more important than the office view was the executive budget Terrence Fletcher provided, allowing me to build my own dedicated client solutions division from scratch. My very first executive action was to extend formal job offers to Maria and Devon, who had both submitted their resignations to Apex 24 hours after my departure. Within 2 weeks, they joined my team at Pinnacle, receiving 30% salary increases and complete health benefit packages. Priya, whose employment visa was initially tied to Apex, was supported by Pinnacle's immigration legal team, enabling her to join our growing department 3 months later. Meanwhile, Gerald Montgomery kept his promise regarding internal corporate accountability. Following his personal audit of Apex Regional Office 8, Graham Palmer was summarily terminated for executive misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty. Brenda from Human Resources was reassigned, and Apex's foolish offshore liquidation strategy was permanently abandoned. But for Apex's client portfolio, it was far too little and far too late. 30 days after my transition, Audrey Kensington officially executed documents transferring Westfield International's $7 million enterprise account from Apex to Pinnacle Systems. The transition team Apex assigned to replace me was so utterly incompetent that they could not configure basic security protocols, Audrey told me over lunch. When I complained to corporate, they had the audacity to tell me my technical expectations were unrealistic. Moving our business to Pinnacle was the easiest decision our board ever made. Spencer Dunbar at Alder Tech followed suit. 60 days later, transferring their $5 million contract to Pinnacle. Within 6 months, Briarwood Systems and Tetracorp also executed account transfers. In total, 5 of my former top 10 enterprise clients migrated their business to Pinnacle Systems, representing over $15 million in recurring annual revenue. I was scrupulously careful throughout the entire process. I never once violated non-solicitation guidelines, nor did I ever share a single piece of proprietary software code. The clients transferred their business voluntarily because enterprise technology is fundamentally built on human trust, operational excellence, and proven personal relationships. When a company treats its core executive talent as disposable line items, clients recognize that the company's commitment to quality has vanished. 3 years have passed since that terrifying morning when Brenda slid that paper across her desk. Today, I serve as Executive Vice President of Global Client Success at Pinnacle Systems, leading an extraordinary team of 22 dedicated professionals. My department generates record-breaking margins, but more importantly, we operate with a culture centered on mutual respect, professional empowerment, and unwavering integrity. Financially, my life has been transformed beyond anything I thought possible during those dark days following my divorce. My base salary, executive bonuses, and equity options have provided absolute long-term financial security for my family. Mason's asthma is exceptionally well managed under the care of the finest pediatric specialists in the state, covered entirely by our premium health insurance. Most importantly, I am present for my son's life. I work hard, but I no longer allow corporate demands to steal the irreplaceable moments of fatherhood. I have not missed a single robotics competition, soccer match, or science fair in 3 years. Last month, Mason took first place in the regional middle school STEM fair for his automated environmental sensor project. I sat in the front row, cheering loudly, with tears of immense pride streaming down my face. A few weeks ago, I ran into Bernard Holt at an executive technology summit in Chicago. The old founder walked up to me, his eyes filled with genuine emotion, and gave me a tight, heartfelt hug. "Richard," he said quietly, looking down at the floor, "leaving Merrickson and building what you have at Pinnacle was the single greatest move you could have ever made. I should have protected you all so much better. I foolishly believed Apex would honor their promises." "It was business, Bernard," I replied softly, quoting Gerald Montgomery's former words with a quiet, knowing smile. "Nothing personal. But that is a profound falsehood, isn't it? Corporate liquidators love to preach that business is never personal, using that convenient slogan to justify treating human beings as disposable commodities. But our work, our worth, our dedication, and our families are deeply, intensely personal. Pretending otherwise is merely a corporate excuse for poor leadership. The true victory was never about getting petty revenge on Graham Palmer or watching Apex lose $15 million in revenue. It was not even about my sleek corner office or my expanded compensation package. The true victory was discovering my own self-worth. It was having the legal knowledge, the courage, and the moral conviction to stand up and say, "No, I am worth far more than this, and I refuse to be devalued." I still think about that cold Tuesday morning sometimes, staring at that paper, sliding across Brenda's desk, feeling the world collapse around me, and believing I was completely powerless. I was wrong. We all possess immense power. When we stand on our integrity, understand our legal rights, and refuse to accept mistreatment, sometimes it just takes being pushed to our absolute limit to realize what we are truly capable of achieving. So if you are reading this today, trapped in a job that devalues your contributions, treats you as easily replaceable, or demands you sacrifice your family's well-being for corporate bottom lines, remember this: you have worth, you have legal rights, and you have options. And sometimes, taking control of your life takes nothing more than making one brave phone call to change everything.